Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Todd Klindt's SharePoint Netcast number 175, recorded live Monday, October 28th, 2013. I am your host, and this year I'm one of the World Series mascots. I'm a big bushy beard. That's why I got the brown on. Todd Klindt, because I can't actually grow facial hair. So this is my whole thing. Got to give a shout out to my folks at Rackspace. Got the flag, got the thing with the Rackspace folks. They make this all possible. They support all this. They bought me this fancy microphone, gave me this fancy red cup, all that stuff. So if you're bored, while you're watching this, it doesn't hurt to open up in another browser, SharePoint.rackspace.com. Let those guys see what's going on there. We've got free training there. We got information if you want to buy stuff from us. We got like SharePoint tips and things, all kinds of crazy stuff. You can find all that at SharePoint.rackspace.com. And we will have some other Rackspace and SharePoint URLs for you later in the netcast. So while you're scribbling all these important URLs down, leave space for one more at the bottom because we're going to have another one. On to the production notes. Production notes are going to be pretty short tonight. The big one was I learned a sad thing about YouTube this week. I screwed up the title page on 174's video. So, I got the little thing, my picture comes in and the swirling stuff in the background, and then it says, the netcast number. So I do all that in Camtasia. And at some point, I do plan on doing a netcast about how I do the netcast. But I render all the video out in Camtasia, and I have a template, a project template. So I just open that up, and it's got all the animation stuff, and it's got my intro music and all that. But it's also got those two text boxes, and you can tell I made those sometime in July, now that the cat's out of the bag. And so I just bring that up. I drop the new video in. And then I go in and edit those two boxes at the beginning where I put the show title and the number and the date, except I forgot to do that last week. So got it all uploaded, got it all rendered, and I just thought of something I needed to do. But then I was checking it out on YouTube, and I noticed it had the wrong number, so I had to replace that. So what I found was that on YouTube, you can't replace videos. You can only edit them a little bit, and you can delete them. And so I had to redo the video, which gave it a new URL. So that's kind of a stinker, but that was a good time. So now I just have to be careful. Jared in the chat room is saying that he thinks a netcast about the netcast would be an awful lot of production notes. For those of you that have been here for a while, and I know like Trevor has, and Lori has, and Tim has, some of those folks, the production notes for like 2 years ago's netcasts were the bulk of the netcast. It was all, I'm sorry, the audio sucks again this week. I promise I'll try to fix it. The production notes have become a very small part of the netcast, to the point where I thought about getting rid of them, but then I do bonehead things like last week where I didn't fix the title, and then I'm reminded why I have to keep the production notes in. But I've had a couple of people ask me about it, how what software I use, what hardware I use, and all that kind of stuff. I think I am not a good example of what anybody should do, but I'm willing to share any of that because everybody serves as an example, good example, bad example. So I'm willing to be either. I don't care. But yeah, I'll do that sometime, and that'll come up later here too. So, but I think that's all for the production notes. I think everything else is going pretty smoothly. On to our topics. So I mentioned, I did that thing where I was building anticipation, foreshadowing. At Rackspace, we're trying some new stuff out. We have a Facebook page. You can go to facebook.com/SharePoint@Rackspace. And while the SharePoint.Rackspace.com is all read-only, and it's how we talk to you, you can go to Facebook.com/SharePoint@Rackspace, and it's a SharePoint group, so you can communicate with us, ask us questions, tell Shane how much he drags me down, things like that. Post questions there, do whatever. That's been up for a week or so now. If you'd like to go out there and like that or check that or friend that or whatever you do with that thing on Facebook, that would be pretty cool. And but again, it's just a good two-way communication street. Our marketing guy Justin is in charge of it. Trevor in the chat room is asking, can we make fun of Shane? I would almost say you're required to make fun of Shane. So if you have a legitimate question, like, where's Laura's video on doing the thing with the clicking in the thing, you have to precede that question with Shane stinks, and where is Laura's video on the thing with the thing. I think that seems to bring those questions up to the top of the thing. So there's a few of us that are kind of watching that, kind of see what's going on. But if you've ever wanted to like reach out and just, have a conversation or talk to folks, you can go to facebook.com/SharePoint@Rackspace, and they would be happy to chat with you. So I also mentioned earlier that I was thinking about doing a podcast about a podcast and those kind of things. I got great news, and I was hoping that one of my friends would be in tonight, but she's not in the chat room tonight, Lynn Dye. But I'm going to the new Media Expo again next year, since it's in January. So those of you who've been watching for over a year now probably remember last January I went to the new Media Expo, or NMX as all the cool kids are calling it. And that was just kind of a thing. I didn't really want to go because I travel a lot for work, and my boss, Jeff DeVerter, said, you should go to this new Media Expo. It's out of Vegas. You might learn something. And I'm like, we both know I'm not going to learn anything because that's just not how I work. But gosh, it's right after the new year and I'm tired and all that. He's like, no, go. It'll be fun. And I went, and it was fun. Not only did I get to do a bunch of fun stuff, I got to meet Leo Laporte for the first time. So that was pretty cool. And that helped, jumpstart into me being a guest host on Windows Weekly earlier this year. But it was great to go to a conference where I didn't have any responsibilities because I wasn't doing anything there. And it was also great to go to a conference that wasn't a bunch of stinky tech nerds. So this new Media Expo was all about blogging and having video series on the web and podcasting and all that crazy stuff. And it was great to kind of get outside of my comfort zone and see the different ways that other people are doing stuff. So for you guys, there were some direct improvements to the podcast because of that. So I've got the YouTube channel now. That's directly because of NMX, because there was a guy there that was talking about, ways to distribute stuff and make your stuff as easy to consume as possible. And so the YouTube page is from that. Some of the other things, just kind of the quality stuff, the audio quality, the focus on that. A lot comes from NMX, the lower thirds and things like that. So just it kind of refocused me on the non-technical, or I guess more technical, but not SharePoint technical pieces. So I begged and pleaded to go back again this year, and I got that approved last week. So I'm going to be out there in Vegas, and that's like January 4th through the 6th or 4th through the 7th or something. I forget the actual dates, but I'm dragging Justin, our marketing guy, out there. He's a new media kind of guy, and so he'll be tagging along with me. But it's just a good time, and hopefully I'll be able to bring back some other tips to make this whole thing a little better. Now, so some folks in the chat room, Lori and Fabian and all those guys I go to conferences with and speak with and all that kind of stuff, they're all like, hey, that'd be cool just to attend and not have to have any responsibilities. I'll be honest, I did get a hold of them and try to do a session, but it was kind of complicated because Rackspace is a sponsor for that, so they get sessions. But Robert Scoble works at Rackspace, and so he gets those sessions. But I did email him about it, and what I was going to do the session on was how I make my Netcast. So it was going to be all that stuff I talked about before, the hardware I use, the software I use. So I actually have an outline for all of that, and but we'll see. They said that the podcasting sessions were full, but that they would let me know if something opened up, which is them just being very nice, saying, "Who are you?" and "No way in hell." But they were very nice about it. They were very pleasant. Jack's in the chat room saying that he'd love to go. You should do it. It's like they've got different tiers of tickets, but it's at the Rio, which is not too expensive to stay at. It's kind of off the strip, so that makes it a little cheaper. But absolutely, if you do any of this kind of stuff, it's great. Blogging, anything like that, it's all good stuff. Had a blast last year. So I'm going to be going to that. I'm looking forward to that. Speaking of blogging, I have a blog post to talk about. I told you guys last week, I think, or something like that, how there have been a lot more PowerShell topics coming up in the Netcast and all that kind of stuff. Because at work there are a bunch of us who on Fridays are sending out PowerShell tips. So this was somebody else's idea, but I couldn't have other people sending out PowerShell tips and not play along. So every Friday now I'm tasked with coming up with a new PowerShell topic. So the one that I had for last Friday, which I blogged about this weekend, is using the measure command commandlet to time how long something takes in PowerShell. So way back in the dark ages, when I had to fight mammoths to get to work, and NT4 was all the rage, the NT4 resource kit came out, and it had a command called timethis.exe. And you would run time this and then whatever you wanted it to time, and it would tell you how long it took to run that command. And that was pretty cool. It helped for some long-running things if you wanted to see how long stuff took. And I used it for a lot of things, but then that resource kit, didn't get updated, and well, NT4 is, 100 years old now. So measure command is like the new world way of doing that. So now you take measure command and you put in curly brackets either a script name or a script block, and it will run. Your script will run just like it normally would. But then at the end, measure command will spit you out a time date object that will tell you how long it took to execute. So the context this came up in is, like I mentioned in my blog post, a coworker was doing some upgrade stuff, and they were testing how long databases took to mount and how long they took to upgrade and all that kind of stuff. And they wanted to know if there was a good way to time it. So there's a couple of different ways to do that particular thing, but I think measure command was probably the best one. And so they could, and I was, honestly, this was one of the developers on my team. I was just shocked and amazed he was actually testing anything. So I wanted to do everything I could to help him out because, try to encourage, positive reinforcement, encourage that good behavior. So measure command is a good way to do that. So just put it in brackets and then whatever you're going to do, and at the end it'll tell you. And since it spits out a time date object, you can filter however. It's got properties, hours, minutes, all that kind of stuff. So you could actually do logic based on that. If something takes longer than a certain amount of time, all kinds of stuff. For SharePoint, the upgrade stuff is good. The other thing is when things start getting slow in SharePoint, like if SQL's getting slow or whatever, there are certain actions that take a long time. Things like creating webs, creating content databases, things that are back-end SQL intense start taking a long time. But unfortunately, as humans, we don't have a really good way to measure what a long time is. Does it feel like a long time? It felt shorter last time, but now you can use measure command to actually see how long it takes. Like you can set your farm up and create a new team site and use measure command, blah, new SP site, blah, and find out exactly how long that takes. And then maybe once a month or whatever, you can do that again and make sure that things aren't slowing down. But it's very objective. You can't. It doesn't worry about your human feelings. So measure command is a good one. I have no idea what I'm going to do on Friday for my next one, but you guys will find out about it on Monday when I blog about it. But this whole PowerShell thing's been fun. I get kind of complacent with PowerShell. I don't try real hard to find new things, and so this has been kind of pushing me to find new stuff. So you can check out the blog post. It's number 450, and I think the short URL is toddklindt.com/measurecommand. All is one word. So Fabian's talking about perceive versus real. I was talking to Mark Manassi about this at a Tech Ed a year or two ago, and we were talking about this, how long things take, and he was saying that, for something to feel faster, it has to be significantly faster, like 50% faster. But for it to feel slower, it only has to be like 10 or 15% slower. So that's how we get into these things where our perception is way off. So having good tools like this helps take the human factor out. Okay, the next thing that I want to talk about is the October 2013 cumulative update for SharePoint 2013 Server. Came out yesterday. So they appear to be doing another one of these staged rollout kind of things. Learning some lessons from the Windows 8.1 rollout. Everybody tried to upgrade at the same time. Everything failed. No, they probably just wasn't done in time. But the Foundation update came out a couple of weeks ago. And then yesterday, the server version of the October 2013 CU came out. You can grab that. No sign of the project server patch yet. Not up online. I know what the knowledge base numbers are, but the pages aren't there. You can't get to anything. The Office Web Apps one, ironically, the knowledge base article is not out, but the download is. So you can actually download it. You just can't see what it fixes. And I haven't added that yet. But if you want to get the URLs for all of that, of course, you can go to your one-stop place for all things SharePoint 2013 patch related, toddklindt.com/SP2013 builds. This particular patch has its own page at toddklindt.com/SP2013 OCT13 CU. And so that you can find out notes and that kind of stuff. And then for up to the minute information on patching when stuff comes out, you can follow me on Twitter at twitter.com/SP2013 patches. And every time I update those pages, I'll send out tweets and stuff like that. So Trevor in the chat room's already got some things that's supposed to fix. I haven't tested any of them yet. But as always, with any of these patches for SharePoint 2010, 2013, if you find a problem with a patch, if you can reproduce it or if you blogged it or whatever. I know Jared's had a bunch that I've done. Trevor's had a bunch that I've done. They've blogged things, they've found problems, and send them to me. If I can reproduce it, I'll throw it in the regressions page. And there's been people in the chat room, like right now, there's an anonymous guy, MIB5LR, who that's really valuable for. So you're not helping me out so much as you're helping all your fellow admins out. And I give you full props for it. I'm not trying to steal anybody's thunder. But if you've got that, or if you know notes, like Trevor's got a couple of things that he thinks it fixes, those specific things, that just helps everybody out. So send them to me. You can email them to me. You can tweet them to me. You can do whatever. And if I can reproduce it, if I can verify it, I'll throw it out there on those regression pages. So, and I mentioned last week that I'm going to be adding the Office Web Apps build numbers and all that kind of stuff to my SharePoint 2013 blog post. Just haven't done that yet. I've got them all done. It's all, I've even put the 2013 one in there, the October one. But just haven't gotten around to it. Had a busy week and all that. So, but again, any problems or anything with patches, give me a shout and I will add it. So this is an article that I ran across here in the last week. This is a TechNet article on how to secure your SQL Server for SharePoint. And this is kind of, and it's interesting because, again, last week I talked about how I'm writing this SQL installation blog post for SharePoint. I'll probably add a link to this at the end of it. But this is 3 techniques that you can use to harden your SQL Server, your SharePoint Farms SQL Server. And he kind of breaks it down into 3 parts. He talks about the first part is the encryption at rest. And that is, so SQL Server has this built-in thing called Transparent Database Encryption, or TDE, where you can encrypt your databases. They are encrypted on disk, they are encrypted in RAM, and TempDB and all that kind of stuff gets encrypted along with that, but it's key based, so that if anybody uses your, steals your backups or something like that, or makes copies of your hard drives, whatever, they can't actually get to your content without your key. So that is one way to harden your SQL Server, is to encrypt your data at rest. The next thing that he talks about is encryption across the wire. So this is inter-server communication, and he shows you how to set that up with SSL, so that if anybody's sniffing your packets coming across the wire, that they won't be able to pull that GUI SharePoint data out. And then the final thing that he talks about is server isolation, and that's essentially just setting up firewall rules that only let your SQL Server talk to SharePoint servers and AD servers and your management workstations and things like that. So I don't know that I would recommend doing all of those things with any type of security in any aspect of life, whether that's encrypting your databases, locking your house, any of that kind of stuff. Security always makes things less convenient, so you just need to find, what that boundary is. Now, if you're a company that's got SharePoint data that includes my address, my email address, or my social security number, by all means use all three of those. Use a couple of them twice if it won't hurt. But for everybody, just for every situation, you need to figure out what the right security, the right agreement between convenience and secure is. But here are three pretty good ideas on how to make SQL more secure. Okay, so here's a sad note. I've got a pretty fun blog post on what the difference between Skydrive and Skydrive Pro is. And it's been a pretty popular blog post. It definitely, I was kind of ahead of the wave on that one. There have been some other blog posts from the SharePoint team and all that have stolen some of its thunder. But that was a pretty well-trafficked blog post about how Skydrive Pro works with SharePoint and all that. And one of the questions that I got in the comments of the blog post was whether Skydrive Pro works with SharePoint 2010 or not. Because if you remember, SharePoint 2010 had its own version of that called Workplace or Workspaces or whatever. Nobody used it. But they were wondering if Skydrive Pro replaced that. So I saw that question, thought that's a really good question. So I've got a couple of SharePoint 2010 servers that I could test against. I installed Skydrive Pro on my, I already had it on my desktop. Hooked up to those SharePoint 2010 boxes. The sync button showed up. I was able to sync things. I tested it back and forth. Looked like it worked. And so I went in there and I was creating a FAQ part at the bottom, and I said, absolutely, SharePoint 2010 is happy with Skydrive Pro. Works like a champ. And then as, that was many months ago. So then as, the Office clients have been getting updated, they get patches too. I don't really care about them, but they get patches. Skydrive Pro also gets patches. And one of the more recent patches broke SharePoint 2010 support. So I guess before it mostly worked. There were situations where it didn't work. I didn't encounter any of those when I tested it, but apparently there were some that did. And with this recent patch, Microsoft has essentially just said, coded in if version equals SharePoint 2010, kill the connection. So SharePoint, and then they posted some stuff that says we do not support SharePoint 2010 with Skydrive Pro. So I went in, adjusted my article on that. So if you're using Skydrive Pro, it works awesome against on-premises SharePoint 2013. It works great with Office 365, but it does not work anymore for SharePoint 2010. So sad day for that, but I wanted to make sure and clarify that because I had told people otherwise. Felt kind of bad about that. Here is another good article that sadly somebody else wrote. Just a lot of people out there that are way smarter than me, and thank goodness they write good stuff like this one. So my buddy Waldeck over in the Netherlands, he wrote a white paper that's on Microsoft right now about how to optimize SharePoint Server 2013 for search engine optimization for your public sites. And so this was pretty good, good information, and it's big. It's like 50 pages. He covers all kinds of stuff in there. But it's all about both the new aspects of search engine optimization that have come up in SharePoint 2013. SharePoint 2013 actually has some SEO stuff built in. It's a feature you can turn on and things that you can define. You can define metadata and titles and that kind of stuff. So it kind of walks you through that. And then he talks about just general SEO stuff, what search engines look for, what they weigh, what they don't weigh, things to watch out for. So things like, if you've got, like my blog you can get to is www.toddklindt.com and toddklindt.com. Depending on how you enter your stuff into your browser, each way is more convenient for some folks. But he mentions in there, and rightfully so, that search engines will ding you on that if the same information is available in two different places, because I think you're trying to game the system, which is sort of what search engine optimization is, but use your powers for good. So there's a lot of just general search engine optimization stuff in there. Again, 50 pages, good read. Highly recommend downloading it. One thing I will tell you is for my own, personal stuff, I have done almost no search engine optimization with my blog, which shows if you ever try to search for anything on my blog. Excuse me. Because in my head, there's a fine line between good search engine optimization and bad SEO. because that's way easier to say than optimization. So, you know, there's a certain point where you do things to get good content out there. Like, for instance, one of the things that I've done is for the title of my blog posts, if it's about SharePoint 2013, I make sure that SharePoint 2013 exists in the title. Another thing that I do that's SEO related is when I publish my blog, you know, if you download it from my site, the MP3 or the MP4, the title is, you know, Netcast 175 dash the name. But when I put them on YouTube, at the beginning I put Todd Klindt's SharePoint, Netcast, whatever, so that when people go onto YouTube and search for SharePoint or search for me, it shows up. So those things seem good. They seem, you know, because it's being honest, I'm trying to get information out there and make it so that people can find it when they're searching for it. But you can take SEO too far. You can try to game the system. So I've never done much because I'm just not sure where that line's at. But I guess keep in mind that when you're reading Waldeck's paper, that the search engines are constantly changing things. Google just rolled out a new back-end search thing a couple of months ago here. I forget what it's called, Hardening or something, where they're just kind of changing how they weigh things and how they determine things. It's just a constant flowing thing. So read Waldeck's paper, and it's good. Everything I read in it seemed legitimate, but just know that it's not a read it once and understand it. It's a constantly evolving thing. SEO changes over time, and the things that you're going to want to do to your site to make them show up well are going to change over time also. But good stuff from Waldeck. And that reminds me of another thing, and I can't remember if I shared this with you guys or not. Same topic, search engine optimization, SEO stuff. Google has a great thing on their site called Trends, where you can see search results. You can see search queries. You can see what other people are searching for. And I can't remember if I've talked to you guys about this or not, but it was cool enough. It fits well on the heels of Waldeck's thing. And so one of the things that you can do with the trending is you can see how often people search for terms compared to other terms. So if you go to google.com/trends/explore, you can put different search terms in, and it'll give you a nice little graph and tell you which one of those search terms people search for more often. So for instance, I've got my SharePoint 2010 and 2013 builds pages, and I think that's the phrase that I use, SharePoint 2010 builds, because it's the build numbers, right? I'm a nerd, that's what I think of. But just out of curiosity, I went through and compared that to SharePoint patches and SharePoint version numbers. And the other great thing about these graphs is it gives it to you over time. And so I can tell that it looks like of those phrases, SharePoint version numbers is probably the best one. But if I want my stuff to be more popular in search results, those are the things that people are searching for. So I'm going to have to, you know, tweak my pages if I want to do that. The other interesting thing, Trevor brought this up in the chat room, is it also tells you regions. So, and the way this came up is we're kind of doing some SEO type stuff on the SharePoint.rackspace.com page, trying to figure out what to call products and how to describe products so that people can find them. And we were using a couple of terms and found out that one term was really high, and it's actually the same country that Trevor's talking about, India. It was the most popular search term in India, but everywhere else it wasn't. But the problem is we don't have any hosting centers in India. So we just kind of had to know our audience a little bit better. So the Google trending is a good thing to have with Waldeck's paper if you want to see what search terms people are using. The other thing to keep in mind is, there are synonyms. One of the things that we did searches for was to see how often people searched for SharePoint services as opposed to like SharePoint consulting or whatever. And SharePoint services shot through the roof. It was way by a large margin the most popular. But then we remembered that previous versions of the product were called Windows SharePoint Server and all that. So the whole SharePoint Server, SharePoint Services, and all that kind of stuff got confusing. So while people were searching for it, they might not have been searching for it in the way that we wanted them to. But that's a nice, good thing to put after Waldeck's thing. All right. So here's one, and it's good that Vlad is in the chat room. there's a bunch of us on Twitter that are always trying to figure stuff out and help each other with problems. And Vlad was having a problem, and Vlad, I would attempt to say your last name, but I would just embarrass myself. So I'll act like you and I are old friends and we're on a first name basis. But Vlad was having a problem where SharePoint wasn't loading the CSS correctly for his pages, and he was getting the sprites and all kinds of crazy stuff. And so, and he was getting a 403, which was interesting. So we were kind of helping. There's 2 or 3 of us that were kind of bouncing ideas off of him as to what to try. And one thing that Vlad did, which was awesome, is after he figured out the problem, he blogged it with all the great information so that if anybody else has that, they can go back and fix it. Because I see that a lot. People have problems, they fix them, and I'm guilty of that. The search problem I talked about last week, I haven't blogged that yet. But he put that out there so if anybody else has this problem. So again, what he determined was he had a SharePoint app, and it wasn't loading the CSS for it correctly. He was getting a 403, which is a forbidden. And so we were doing all kinds of things like looking, we had Procmon open, we had Fiddler open, all kinds of crazy stuff, trying to figure out where this 403 was coming from. And what he ended up figuring out was that his SharePoint apps, web app, so the one that has no host header that all of his SharePoint apps are hosted out of, was in a different app pool than his content web app. So in this case, it was his My Sites. That's not a big deal. That's okay. And actually, I think I set things up that way. But the problem was they were different app pools, which is okay. They were different accounts or app IDs, and that is not okay. So the SharePoint app was trying to access stuff as one account, and the web app was trying to access things as a different account. And apparently SharePoint got disgusted, just threw its hands up in the air and said, no CSS for you, and killed it. So, and Vlad's page is pretty good. He's got it all laid out. He's got pictures, he's got text. So if you're going to be running your SharePoint apps in a different app pool than your content, which again I do, and he mentions it in his article, but a lot of it's because I'm old school. But if you do that, make sure they're always the same account. And he says he found more bugs. He's going to be blogging in the next week. So stay tuned when you get to Vlad's blog post and you get out of my links here. Just go ahead and subscribe to it. Do whatever. He's got some more good stuff coming. All right. So the last thing that I wanted to talk about, and this will be a quick one, is a couple of buddies of mine, Andrew Connell, affectionately referred to as AC, and Chris Johnson, affectionately referred to as CJ, have started their own little podcast. It's called the Microsoft Cloud Show, though when I look at it, it looks like the Microsoft Clown Show. But you can go to MicrosoftCloudShow.com. I think they've got 3 episodes out so far, at least they did last week. And they're both incredibly knowledgeable folks. Both have a strong SharePoint background, but both have strong knowledge in other areas, cloud areas. CJ worked for Microsoft for a long time in the SharePoint team. He's off doing other things now, but they're both doing very cloudy things. So this is just kind of, I think the way they described it in the first episode is just a couple of guys sitting around talking about cloud stuff. They just happen to be recording it, happen to be sharing it. So hopefully you'll be able to find that in iTunes or Zune or wherever Windows phones get that kind of stuff. And then you can go to MicrosoftCloudShow.com and download them that way. But give that a listen. It's pretty entertaining. Leave comments. Tell them hi for me. Let them know where you found it. But that's good stuff too. So we had a couple of questions in the chat room I want to swing up and take a look at. So Fabian Williams is asking some stuff. He upgraded from Windows 8 to Windows 8.1, and it's having some memory problems. I am not doing any virtualization on Windows 8 or not doing any virtualization of Windows 8 right now. So I'm not having Windows 8 or 8.1 as a host or a guest. So I'm probably not much help with that. Hopefully somebody else in the chat room caught that one, helped out with that. Another thing that somebody talked about that I didn't have in my notes is talking about the Surface Pro 2. So the Surface Pro 2 devices came out here a week or so ago, and asking if anybody had one or anything. So if I could get my hands on one, I would have one. And I actually sold my Surface Pro last week to a guy online to get ready, because that was the thing. I wasn't going to buy a Pro 2 until I'd sold my Pro, because those Pro 2s are expensive. But I got my Pro sold, shipped it to the guy, saw the balance in my PayPal account, ran right over to Microsoft's webpage to order me a bright, shiny Pro 2, and they're out of stock, and they expect to start shipping December 15th. I could be dead by December 15th. So I would have a Pro 2, except I can't get a Pro 2. So I have a friend of mine who's going to see if he can snag me one at a Microsoft store. Apparently, people have had some pretty good luck there. So I'll find out about that in a couple of days. If not, I suppose I'll just order one on Microsoft's site and see if I can get one sooner. The model that I'm going to get is the third from the bottom. And it's got 8 gig of RAM and it's got 256 gig of storage. I'm going for that one, not because I need a lot of storage, because I don't, but that's the one with 8 gig of RAM. And my goal is to turn the Surface Pro 2 into my daily driver. So right now I got this huge laptop over here. You can't see it. And I just kind of replace that whole thing. So the other thing is then if I do that, am I going to use the Surface Pro dock? I've thought about it. Microsoft said that they weren't going to have any of those available until Q1 of 2014, and then last week, of course, the day that all this is going on, the Pro docks, they had a few of them eke out, and I didn't buy one because I didn't know if I was anything to put in it. So for now, I'm holding off. My buddy Shane was able to find a Surface Pro 2, and he went with a third-party dock instead. And kind of the main reason he went with that is, number one, he didn't know he was going to be able to get a Surface dock soon. But the third-party dock that he bought has 2 video outputs on it, HDMI and DVI, whereas the Surface dock will support 2 monitors, but it's DisplayPort, and you have to be able to daisy chain them. It's only got 1 video plug, and you daisy chain them. And his monitors didn't support that. So he ordered the new one, should be getting here pretty soon. He said he's been using the Surface Pro 2 for a while, so the battery life is crazy good. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. I have this RT, the one that's supplying the slides there. The RT is what I use when I travel because it's good on battery life. So hopefully the Pro 2 will come out and I'll be able to get one, and it'll have good battery life, and then maybe I'll get rid of my RT. So we'll see. But that was a good discussion there in the chat room. I would love to have one. But I just can't get there from here. Okay, the very last part, the shameless self-promotion. Now, I recognize a lot of people in the chat room, and most of them have already checked this off their bucket list, but they have a copy of Professional SharePoint 2013 Administration. If you don't have one, for goodness sakes, I hope it's because you've been in a coma or stuck under a rock or something. But you can go out, you can go to toddklindt.com/pro SP2013 admin, has all the links to get it off a Kindle or whatever, or if you want to order an autographed copy from me, you can get that too. And I've got a box of them out in the next room. I scribble some stuff on it, mostly bad stuff about Shane, and then I ship it out to you, and that's good if you're in the U.S. I can do that. So there, we got that. Now, I know that all of you are counting down the days. What is it, like 12 days until my next PowerShell article gets published at Hey Scripting Guy. So Ed Wilson, the guy at Hey Scripting Guy, the Scripting Guy, has been kind enough to publish another one of my articles, and so that's coming out here in a couple of weeks, November 9th. It'll be out there, and so that's good time. So if you don't already subscribe to Hey Scripting Guy or don't follow him on Twitter and all that kind of stuff, great PowerShell stuff in there. The guy is phenomenal and just a super friendly, nice, wonderful person. Just him and his wife Teresa are great. Just love him like family. But he's been kind enough to humor me and publish another blog post out there, so I'm very excited to see it there. Hey Scripting Guy is a huge, it's a huge platform. It's very well respected. I've been following that blog forever, so it's pretty cool to be a part of that. Been very excited. Well, talking about conferences and new Media Expo and all that kind of stuff, I'm still doing a pre-conference session at the SharePoint conference in next year. So Shane and I are doing a SharePoint 2013 installation session. And if you haven't already signed up, you can go to sharepointconference.com. The conference itself is March 3rd through the 6th, but our thing is on the 2nd. So That'll be Sunday, March 2nd. We'll be out there 8 hours. Lots of SharePoint 2013, lots of cow jokes and all that kind of stuff. But sign up for that. The conference is $2,000. Whether or not that's expensive, that's I'll let folks debate that. But our session is $400 on top of that. So, but it's worth it. I promise you. It's like $50 an hour. It's like $25 an hour for Shane and I independently. It's good stuff. You can't miss it. We'd love to have you. So show up for that. And since we're talking about conferences, good time to bring up SP TechCon. That'll be in San Francisco next year. That's April 22nd through the 25th. Shane and I are doing some sessions there. I've forgotten which ones, but we'll be there. So that is all the places that you can see me for now. As I get new conferences and stuff set up, I'll let y'all know. As always, swing by, say hi if you come to one of these conferences. I'm a pretty friendly guy, so if you swing by and tell me you listen to the Netcast, I'll give you a big hug and we'll chat like we're old friends. It's a good time. So thanks everybody in the chat room. Big crowd. I'm going to be in the chat room for a few minutes, so don't everybody run off. Thanks everybody. We'll be back next week. Have a happy Halloween. Get lots of candy. Eat yourself sick. I know that's what I'm going to do. But be better, because I'll see y'all next week. Thanks.